We're back. Welcome back into the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. Andy Backstrom, Tim May, the 41-year vet, and Spencer Holbrook. Thanks for being here with us. As Ohio State begins spring practice on Tuesday, we talk to players on Monday, though Ryan Day, Chip Kelly tomorrow for your viewing pleasure at lettermenrow.com. For now, we're going to break down what we just heard from the quarterbacks, Lincoln Kienholz, Devin Brown, and Will Howard, from Donovan Jackson, and from Emeka Egbuka and Trevion Henderson. There's a lot to break down here as spring practice gets underway for the Buckeyes. Tim, what did you take away?
I took away, number one, Devin Brown is in it to win it. I mean, a lot of people are basically handing the job to Will Howard. I understand that. He's been a starter for 2 years at Kansas State, won a Big 12, helped win a Big 12 championship, et cetera. But the last time Ohio State started a football game, Devin Brown was a starting quarterback. He only lasted a quarter until he had a high ankle sprain on his other leg and had to leave the game. One of the most bitter moments, I think, of his entire athletic career. But Devin Brown wants to compete, and he shot down any kind of notion that he's thinking at all about the transfer portal. He's been saying this since he showed up when the quarterback room was packed 3 years ago. He's in this because he wants to compete for the starting quarterback job at Ohio State, and plans to stick that out. So I think we're in for more of a competition there than most people think.
Emeka Egbuka was the first guy that we talked to. He's the leader of this receiver group now that Marvin Harrison Jr. is gone, now that Julian Fleming's gone, and Emeka has a lot to gain from this final year at Ohio State. He'll probably line up different places like we saw Marvin last year. He said he's quite comfortable on the outside. We saw him there in the Cotton Bowl. He loves the idea of getting yards after the catch against cornerbacks versus going up against linebackers and different kinds of safeties in the slot. He said that's where he really was comfortable in high school. He was an outside guy. And so he's really excited about what he can gain his final year at Ohio State. He said it was a decision he had to make. Sat down with his family, sat down just with agents, trying to figure out where he would go, what would be best for him. He felt like his place was here at Ohio State for another year, and it's clear the kind of the leadership he's showing. And he talked about some of those younger guys, Carnell Tate, Brandon Inniss, they're growing year two, and then also Jeremiah Smith. I think I heard the word freak used like 8 different times today by various different players.
I had them define it too, you know what I mean? To put it in perspective.
So they're all very bought into what this receiver group can do, including the newest guy that is the guy, that's Jeremiah Smith.
Yeah, behind us right now is Marvin Harrison Jr., along with Emeka Egbuka, Reese Stocksdale, and Jeremiah Smith. So you've got potentially 3 first-round picks and Reese Stocksdale over there working out. It's pretty cool to see from this vantage point. My big takeaway is just Will Howard, his preparedness for this spring, the way he's attacked everything, trying to become a leader. I asked him about the parallels between 2020 when he arrived at Kansas State and became a starter almost immediately out of necessity, and then here where he's got to entrench himself in the locker room, become a leader so he can bark at people in the spring. I'll write about that at Lettermen Row, but there's some parallels there that I think are interesting. Him trying to establish himself as the leader. And I can't imagine that's easy for him, but I also know that, if there's one guy who's pretty charismatic out here, I'm not going to put it past Will Howard to be that guy. Devin Brown carries a lot of leadership qualities. Lincoln Kienholz, I think, is still trying to find his way in terms of leadership as one of those guys in that quarterback room. But, Will Howard exudes it, and he's not afraid to show it, to us and in that locker room. And I just think he's so fascinating as part of this machine because everything's in place for him to be everything Ohio State could want him to be in his 1 year remaining of college football. And he just has to go out there and do it and live up to what he needs to live up to.
Yeah, we can debate, forever, when is the best time to name a starting quarterback? Because, like you just brought up, I think it's important for the starting quarterback to have the blessing of the coaching staff, meaning, or they're ordaining by the coaching staff, because now everybody knows that's the guy.
Yeah.
And like I was asking Devin Brown, he didn't really have an opinion on this because he wants to compete for the starting job, but he didn't have an opinion on when is the best timing. But I think we all thought last year, going all the way through preseason camp, spring and then preseason camp, and not really anointing Kyle McCord until just before the season opener.
Yeah.
But then bringing Devin Brown along in a package where he was going to play until he got hurt the first time, I'm not sure it does your team the justice it needs, but you want this to play out on the field. You want everybody leaving the spring, if in fact that's when you name it, of agreeing Will Howard is your starting quarterback or Devin Brown is your starting quarterback, and here's why. Because it did so much for Devin Brown, though, going into that Cotton Bowl, of knowing he was going to be the starter, of being named the starter, even though maybe they didn't make it public for us, of knowing he was going to be the starter. People react to you differently. And so that's why this spring, this spring is really critical, man. I keep thinking about it more and more. This is as critical a spring as almost any others because you've got all this talent. Now, who's going to be the true leader?
Well, one of the leaders in this offense is definitely going to be TreVeyon Henderson. You could tell the leadership change from just the past year, really, him tapping into his faith, changing as a person, clearly. He's talked about that at length. And today, I think it just really becomes clear how amazing it is that all these guys came back, TreVeyon included, because he said there was a point where he was really thinking about going to the league. Actually, he had the training all set up, scheduled. He was going to leave Ohio State.
And he indicated he wasn't even going to come back to Columbus possibly after the Cotton Bowl.
Right, but he said
he
was called by God to play in that Cotton Bowl, and then after that was still deciding if the NFL was right for him or if he should stay. He mentioned and recalled this kind of emotional church service he went to here in Columbus with G. Scott and Xavier Johnson, and mentioned kind of the words they gave him, and ultimately felt like he just needed to be here for one more year to continue to grow in his spirituality, continue to grow as a player. He's welcoming Quinshon Judkins. He said, really just part of that is, again, his faith, trying to be someone that can help Quinshon Judkins. And he's been open to, multiple guys in the backfield really since high school, and this is something that he feels like can be best for the both of them, regardless of where the position's going at the NFL and kind of devaluing of the position. So just some emotional and inspirational words from TreVeyon Henderson. But again, I guess my takeaway from this, it's crazy that all these guys were kind of close to going to the NFL.
Yeah, but we all knew they were.
Right, we did. But when they all come back, you're like, okay, maybe it was one after the other. But these were individual decisions they were making.
Yeah.
And they all could have gone the other way.
And despite it being, Ryan Day had lost his locker room. Remember that idiot that posted that? Remember that tweet that goes down in infamy? It's crazy. But there's strength in numbers too, when you make a decision, but others are making the same decision, that even more tells you, hey, I'm probably making the right decision here. There's something special in one form or fashion I still want to be a part of. And that's really what it was. Because I'm telling you, man, when you go to the NFL, you are on your own, brother.
Well,
you play on teams, but you're on your own.
The thing about it is, we can say that these are all individual decisions, but it's a lot easier to come back to a team that's going to be good than a team that's in a little bit of a retuning. And so it is an individual decision, but it's really not. It's like you look at the surroundings and all of that. But anyway,
it's almost like winning a transfer portal battle. I mean, when these guys come back. I mean, that's the equivalent of big-time players like J.T. Tuimoloau, Jack Sawyer, like you just said, TreVeyon Henderson.
And Donovan Jackson, who I talked to at length about getting over what happened against Michigan. Because the last time we talked to him, he looked almost visibly shook up talking about it. And I asked him, how are you doing? Like, how is that going? And he said that he's talked to people, he's using it as fuel, but not continuing to dwell on it like he was, quite frankly. And again, I'll have that lettermenrow.com. But some really good insight from Donovan. But, we could sit here and talk for 45 minutes about, or maybe even longer, about the guys that we talked to. But pivot here just a little bit to wrap us up here. Tim, we're going to watch 20 minutes of spring practice tomorrow.
30, I thought.
Okay, we're going to watch 30 minutes of spring practice. It's all going to be stretching and special teams, and maybe some individual stuff.
Yeah, we might see a little bit.
But when you think about what we're going to see tomorrow, what are you looking forward to the most? Quick answer. What are you looking forward to the most?
What I do is I practice my back pedal so I can watch at least 30 seconds of the period we're not get to watch as I leave.
That's a hallmark move.
Number one, you're looking at
staple.
And this is no harbinger, but it might be who lines up first at quarterback, throws the first pass, and any kind of like teamish kind of thing. Who lines up? How's the offensive line deploy? Where is Carson Hinsman? How does he figure in because of what happened in and around the Cotton Bowl? Seth McLaughlin, is he going to be at center? I'm so curious. The main thing I'm curious about this football team is the offensive line, because same as last year, the big project is getting that offensive line intact coming out of spring as a group. And we all know they had some damn good moments last year and had some moments they would much rather not be on video.
Yeah.
So, but the offensive line, because I think they got two quarterbacks that can play big time. The offensive line is what I'm curious about. Who's at right tackle with the first team, et cetera.
What do you want to see, Andy, tomorrow?
Who do I want to see? Jeremiah Smith, just out there. But everyone.
I didn't know we were going to talk about
no.
Cirque du Soleil stuff.
No, I was just asking, what do you want?
Of course we're curious about that.
Well, everyone is, right?
First practice of spring ball. What do you want to see? And so kind of leave the floor open to you.
I think 5 quarterbacks in that room. It's really interesting just to see how they interact. Devin Brown said today that he's had Julian Say and Aaron Nolan over, play cards, and just try to build that camaraderie. But that's a really interesting dynamic, and that's a lot of talent in one room. Only so many reps can go around. I mean, I don't know what we're going to see of actual reps being taken
one
in the
guy's
time that we
left-handed,
get.
for goodness sakes.
Right, but it's going to be interesting to see just how they interact and what is their relationship at this point. And then also with some of the wide receivers, like a year two, Carnell Tate, what does that look like? Is he more vocal? Brandon Innes, same thing. Some of those guys, they're freshmen. You see them obviously talented, but they're not speaking up. They're not stretching alongside the big guys. Well, what does that look like in year two? I'm curious to see.
Isn't it funny how Brandon Innes, I mean, I think Emeka brought him up, but how he almost gets forgotten sometimes when you're discussing the receivers, because it's hard to name 6 guys, in every conversation. But, yeah, I mean, there are guys ready to make a move. You can feel it, and that this spring is going to be huge in that regard.
What I'm most excited to see is the player walkout. Last year, players walked out on the practice field for the first time. We kind of saw that happening, and it's like, okay, this guy looks bigger. This guy looks like he didn't maybe take it as seriously as maybe Ohio State wanted him to. This guy looks like he really locked in these last 8 weeks and made it count. It feels like yesterday we were tracking guys down on the field after the Cotton Bowl and just trying to get a couple words in. Well, they look a lot different than they did. I saw Lincoln Keenholz looks way different than he did during his lone Ohio State appearance.
Where's he from, by the way?
Pierre,
South Dakota. Yeah.
Pierre. And so I love the first day of spring ball because you get such a gauge on where these guys were December 29th and where these guys are on March 6th. Lettermen Row on March 6th will be in this very building watching the first practice for Ohio State, the first 30 minutes, that is. Then we'll talk to Ryan Day and Chip Kelly, and we'll have full coverage at lettermenrow.com and on the Lettermen Row YouTube channel. Hit the little bell underneath, subscribe to the YouTube channel. You'll get updated when Ryan Day and Chip Kelly go live. Tim May, the 41-year vet, he'll be here tomorrow for the opening of Ohio State spring practice. Andy Backstrom will be here for the opening of Ohio State spring practice. I'm wearing a smile because I'm excited. Spring practice is finally here. The 2024 season can officially get underway and kick off. Lettermen Row will have coverage of it 365 days a year like we have for a long time now. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. To Tim May, to Andy Backstrom, to me, Spencer Holbrook. Go to lettermenrow.com, $1 for your first month. We'll see you guys back here tomorrow for the first day of Ohio State spring practice.